Oh boy, we got a good one today, fellas. Welcome, shit slimes, to another episode of Arachnica's iconic yet untitled Borderlands 3 skill review series. Today, we're doing things a little bit differently. Yeah, we're switching things up today, I think. Usually, I talk about single stills or augments per video, but in this one, today we make history, because I'm going to be yapping crazy style, good and bad, about my favorite flak action still alongside all of its augments, Gravity Snare. And I want to be clear here, that's not facetious, it's not a joke, not hyperbole. Grav Trap, Flak's Purple Tree action still, the Purple Tree famously known as utter dog shit with the funny useless action still notorious Snare, is genuinely my favorite. Which means, strap on in, cause this is gonna be a divisive one, and also effectively kicking off the subplot of Ayub's where I try to counter the narrative that Flak's Purple Tree is bad. Spoiler alert, it really isn't. But of course, let's get on into things here and start off with simply what Gravity Snare is. When activated, Flak tosses out a frisbee in legitimately one of the cleanest action still animations there is. I don't know, something about this is just incredibly satisfying and makes me wish that you could hit enemies with it and deal some damage. Absolutely doming a Molly-1 bootlicker with a frisbee just sounds like a good time. When the snare lands, it expands outwards, creating an anti-gravity zone that pulses every 3 seconds, with each pulse lifting all enemies into the air, holding them there and stunning them for 1 second. This skill lasts for 16 seconds and at base has a cooldown of 36. The snare can be picked up from the ground once deployed to refund some of the cooldown depending on the remaining duration. Immediately, this is a very strange skill for Flak. Flak is kind of a strange character in general, with almost everything about them being focused on dumping out intense DPS, which is a little bit unusual for what is visually the Hunter class. Generally though, Flak has low utility and crowd control as a trade-off. They do have access to some other admittedly very strong utility outside of Purple Tree though, through Domination, Red Fang, and Not My Circus, but all of those require specific investment to obtain or specific playstyles to even use. The only other action still with high impact utility at base is really Fade Away, as that lets you instantly drop aggro, but Fade Away is still a huge boost to your DPS alongside that. Gravity Snare is the only action still that Flak has that provides absolutely nothing but CC, which makes it stand out, but not necessarily in a good way. And yes, I know holding an enemy in place could let you land more shots, but shut up, just aim better, they're held in place for a fucking second at a time. Amara can hold an entire screen in place for 6 seconds straight while also transferring a bajillion damage to all of them instantly. Snare isn't a damage still, and even at that, it's just not even good CC, really. As one of the probably 5 freaks total that have ever done a full playthrough with specifically only Gravity Snare, I can say that even from a playthrough perspective, it's not great on its own. The crowd control is nice to have early on, but the area coverage is quite limited. The base 16-second duration means that enemies are only even CC'd for a total of 5 non-consecutive seconds, and not assisting in your DPS at all is a pretty extreme trade-off for what is, bluntly, stinky shit-ass crowd control that's worse than just equipping a frozen heart. Now, I do feel like I need to mention it here. Snare does have an anointment that lets it increase your DPS. It's easily the best anointment to use when building for Snare and is genuinely good, but I'm not going to count it as DPS the action still itself is adding to your build, because, I mean, it's just not. It's an anointment that is doing that, which I might be more open to crediting to Snare if not for the fact that every other action still Flak has an anointment specific to it that increases damage. Not only that, but despite being listed on card as 250% gun damage, it is actually only 150%, meaning it is the exact same damage buff that you get from the Wall Fade Away as active anointment. So it's not even unique in the damage that it provides. But that's just base, because as action stills do, there's augments available that, augment the action still to add more functions. I'll mostly go through these in order, however, I'm gonna jump ahead just for the first one to talk about Wide Net, increasing the duration of Snare by 25% to bring it from 16 to 20 seconds and giving a 100% boost to the radius. The reason I want to talk about this one first is because this this augment is absolutely necessary to using Snare not only effectively, but like literally at all. Look at this comparison. Without wide net, you have to be borderline fucking pixel perfect to hit any moderately large group of enemies, and they're just going to walk out of it in the 2 full seconds they have between pulses anyways. As you'll see as well later, other augments reward you for hitting as many enemies as possible, which of course, wide net greatly improves the ability to do. The duration increase is also really nice, bringing your total pulse count from 5 to, well, 6. Okay, it's not that amazing, but it's still nice. Genuinely though, this is just a waste of an augment slot. We should have gotten a proper augment in place of wide net, with wide net just being the default size and duration of Gravity's Snare, because the existence of it just means that you effectively have one actual augment slot when using this action skill, which, if the action skill itself was stronger, I could maybe understand that as somewhat an interesting point of balance, but like, we're talking about fucking Gravity Snare, bro. Next up is the first actual augment, my favorite augment, and what I believe is by far the strongest augment, Forage. When you stun an enemy with Gravity Snare, they spit out ammo, health, and shield boosters like a meaty pinata. The health and shield boosters alone are really nice to help out with Flak's lower survivability, especially since you have to run around in your funny little gravity circle to pick them up, which can likely put you in more danger, but the star of the show is absolutely the ammo boosters. These are the single strongest form of ammo sustain in the entirety of BL3, and I am confident in saying that. These are the centerpiece of both of the Gravity Snare Flak builds I've uploaded to this channel, and they're the only reason those builds work as well as they do. For reference, these ammo boosters allow you to use the fucking Sandhawk in mobbing as an assault rifle, because the second you pick one of these up, they instantly refill your entire ammo pool. It is ridiculous how good this augment is. Enemies spew these boosters out, and you get to just prance around picking them up and raining hellfire down for free with some of the most ammo-hungry guns available to you. You do not know joy until you experience running a Molly 1 takedown with nothing but a Rhino and never having to worry about running out of ammo. You haven't lived until you get to experience actually playing with the Hydra Frost. You have never, ever properly used the Sandhawk until you run it with Forage. This augment alone is what sold me on Snare being cool, and it's still probably like 90% of the reason that I actually like Snare at all. Which, like, I guess I could end the video here, but whatever, let's talk about the other two augments as well, because you know me, no matter how niche something is in this game, I have an extensive opinion on it. Before getting into the specifics of these next two though, I would like to also acknowledge that one of the single biggest parts of Forage, and to a slightly lesser degree wide net, is just how early they are within the skill tree. Forage is the first augment, requiring only 5 points of investment, with wide net being the second and requiring 10. This is huge for builds that run Forage, because it means that you don't need to waste a bunch of points investing too heavily into a tree that is significantly more catered to pet builds than gun builds, which is what Forage and just kind of Snare in general is more catered towards. This disparity between the action skill's use case and the rest of Purple Tree becomes a significantly larger downside to these next two augments. Luckily though, the next augment, Trap Card, doesn't hurt all that much. In fact, this one could actually be deeper in the tree, and I wouldn't bat an eye. While you have Gravity Snare readied and enter fight for your life, you toss it out towards the enemy that downed you. This is incredibly underwhelming and pretty damn confusing. If you're in a situation where you go down while you have your action skill ready, then sure, it's great to be able to get it out there, especially if you're running the gun damage anointment, since you won't be losing out on that damage while in fight for your life. However, if you're running that anointment, then it's extremely likely that you're throwing out Snare as often as possible to keep that anoint active as much as possible, which means if you enter fight for your life, likely your Snare is either already active anyways or on a cooldown. I think this augment, while far from being anything super amazing, could be better with some slight adjustments. If it would just always throw out the trap no matter what, whether you already have one active or it's on cooldown, then I think it would succeed in the niche of making sure your shit is activated while in fight for your life. Likely this would need a separate cooldown, but it would be pretty reasonable to have that on like a minute cooldown or something. Or, what I think would be even more fun, scrap the fight for your life idea entirely and just make it give you an extra charge of Snare. Let me throw out 2 snares just to zone denial the entire Molly 1 takedown bridge, or be able to cycle for better uptime without having to rely on picking it up and end trap early, since that is something that is often necessary to do for maximum uptime of both the trap itself as well as cycling, action skill, and or start anointments. Having a second charge of trap would make that experience a hell of a lot smoother while making this actually maybe worth the investment of 15 points. But for our final augment, this is the potential augment of this tree, because it suffers the absolute most from its required point investment, otherwise being an amazing augment, that being Blind with Anger. Rather than lifting and stunning enemies, Snare will confuse enemies within its radius with each pulse, having them fight other nearby enemies. This effect will last for 8 seconds. This is significantly better crowd control. Where Forage adds amazingly strong utility to Snare, Blind with Anger enhances the crowd control of it to an absolutely baffling degree. Confusing enemies is very strong in this game, and FL4K has a lot of access to that style of CC. But more than Not My Circus, more than Red Fang, more than fucking Dominance, Blind with Anger can turn a full half of the battlefield against each other and create a constant pulsing zone of further CC. This is probably the single best area denial in Borderlands 3, in theory, because very similar to Amara's Glamour, this is an absolutely incredible augment that provides amazing CC potential, but it's trapped so deep within a tree that specifically doesn't cater to using it so hard that it's effectively completely fucking worthless. As I said earlier, Purple Tree is an amazing tree, but it's specifically an amazing tree for pet builds. Pet builds are fantastic, but they heavily utilize a Gamma Burst, because that's a skill that, you know, buffs the fuck out of your pet. Grav Trap itself, along with every single one of its augments, does absolutely nothing to benefit your pet whatsoever and is best used alongside FL4K-focused builds. This disparity is the exact reason why Blind with Anger, again, likely the single best area denial skill in the entire game, hell, if not the entire franchise, is completely useless, because you have to blow 20 of your 70 skill points to get down to it, with barely any of those points actually benefiting your build and not one of them being as beneficial to you as they would be if you just spent them anywhere else. Likely one of these two trees is your best options for trying to run Blind with Anger. The most useful skills you get that actually benefit FL4K themselves directly is agility training for reload speed, better toys for a bump to your shield recharge speed and delay, and not even challenge for added store duration if your pet gets a kill, but I mean, this isn't a pet build, so that probably wouldn't even give you that much value despite being an amazing skill in a proper build for it. So I don't know, you could trade out the points there for Success Imminent, and I guess that benefits you, but I don't think it benefits you more than it downs you with nearby barrels, so it's probably also not worth it. You can also opt for Monkey Do, which is also a very good skill, one that will get a video on its own, subscribe, but it's more niche in the weapons that it works with. And again, none of these options are as good as spending them in any of FL4K's other 3 trees that benefit gun builds way more. Blind with Anger just isn't worth the investment, and you will always nerf yourself harder than the value that it will give. It is a really fun skill if you do choose to opt for it. There should currently be footage of me playing with it on True Guardian Takedown, and I did have a very fun time with it, but like, it's very obvious that I'm nerfing the hell out of myself even more than I already am in a usual Grav Trap build, and I'm not getting the value that I would need for it to be worth it. So with that all being said, why the hell do I like Gravity Snare as much as I do? I mean, I feel like I probably shit-talked it more than I actually praised it. Simply, it's the most interesting skill that FL4K has to me. It is incredibly unique when compared to the other skills, and it enables FL4K in ways that the other skills just don't, and in ways that opens up the ability to use some very cool weapons in ways they normally can't be used. I'm also just in general a big fan of utility skills and skills that have more engaging and tactical gameplay to them, and I think Snare has a lot of that going for it. Between trap placement, proper cycling, and the odd build crafting that goes into using it, there's a lot of very neat optimizations that you can learn when using it to enhance your gameplay. Overall, Gravity Snare is absolutely a wildly underrated action skill that has a lot of really awesome use cases to it and some really neat potential, even if it doesn't quite reach all of it. Part of me really wonders if FL4K's Snare could have ended up in a better place had it not been written off by the community so quickly, and if some more constructive criticism could have actually made it to Gearbox while they were still patching this game. Anyone in that timeline, sound off in the comments, I guess. was the timeline where Blind with Anger was moved into the tier 2 slot instead of WideNet, and WideNet was instead just made the default size of GravTrap. That's gonna about do it for this one though. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I'll be live right after this video goes up, right here on YouTube and also over my Twitch channel, where there'll be a link to down in the description below, and just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.